Hello, friends. I know I'm just an average guy telling creepy stories, but if you like them and get the scare you're craving for, please leave a like and subscribe. Enjoy the stories. The air in my grandmother's attic was thick with dust, the kind that clung to your throat and made every breath feel like swallowing sand. I was 16, rummaging through boxes of her old junk, looking for something to pawn for gas money. The floorboards creaked under my sneakers, and the single bulb overhead flickered, casting jagged shadows across the clutter. I wasn't supposed to be up here. She'd always said the attic was off limits, that it was full of things best left alone. But she was gone now, her house left to my mom, and I didn't believe in her old superstitions. Not yet. I found it buried under a pile of moth-eaten blankets, a ouija board, its wood warped and stained, the letters carved deep into the surface like someone had scratched them in with a knife. The planchette was heavy, made of some dark, polished stone that felt unnaturally cold against my palm. I don't know why I picked it up. Maybe it was the thrill of doing something forbidden, or maybe it was just boredom. But when I lifted it, the attic seemed to shift. Nothing obvious, just a subtle tilt, like the whole house leaned in to watch. I brought it downstairs to the living room where my friends were sprawled out, half drunk on cheap beer and restless for something to do. Jake, with his perpetual smirk, saw it first. "Holy shit, you found a Ouija board? We're doing this." Sarah, always the skeptic, rolled her eyes but didn't protest. Mike, already buzzed, just laughed and said we'd probably summon a demon that'd make us do math homework for eternity. I didn't care what they thought. I wanted to try it. Something about that board felt heavy, like it was waiting for us. We set it up on the coffee table, pushing aside empty cans and chip bags. The room was dim, lit only by a flickering TV we'd left on mute, some old horror movie playing in the background. The four of us sat cross-legged around the table, knees brushing the planchette in the center of the board. I read the rules off the faded box. All hands on the planchette, ask clear questions, always say goodbye. Simple enough. Jake, being Jake, immediately asked if any spirits wanted to party with us. The planchette didn't move. Sarah snorted, said it was a scam. I told them to focus, to take it seriously. I don't know why I said that. I didn't believe in it either. But the air felt different now, heavier, like the room was holding its breath. We tried again. I asked, "Is anyone here?" My voice sounded too loud in the quiet. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the planchette twitched, just a little, barely enough to notice, but we all froze. Jake's smirk vanished. Sarah's eyes widened, her fingers trembling on the planchette. Mike whispered, "Did you move it?" I shook my head. I hadn't. None of us had. The planchette jerked again, harder this time, sliding to the word, "Yes." My heart kicked against my ribs. I told myself it was Jake screwing with us. He was always pulling pranks. But his face was pale, his hands rigid. Sarah whispered, "Ask it something else." So I did. "Who are you?" The planchette moved faster now, smooth and deliberate, spelling out Notalone. Not alone. The words hung in the air, and I felt a chill crawl up my spine like someone was standing just behind me, breathing on my neck. I turned, half expecting to see someone, but the room was empty. Just us, the board, and the TV flickering in the corner. Jake, trying to play it cool, asked, "What do you want?" The planchette didn't hesitate. It slid to PLAY. Mike laughed, but it was nervous, too high-pitched. "Play what? Like hide and seek?" The planchette moved again, faster, almost violent, spelling BLOOD. The room went quiet. The TV flickered, the screen glitching into static for a second before snapping back to the movie. Sarah yanked her hands off the planchette. "This is fucked up," she said, her voice shaking. "I'm done." I should have stopped it there. I should have listened to the knot in my gut, the one screaming at me to throw the board in the trash and never touch it again, but I didn't. I was curious, stupidly, recklessly curious. "One more question," I said, glaring at Sarah until she put her hands back on the planchette. "What's your name?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. The planchette didn't move at first. Then it started to glide, slow and deliberate, spelling out a single word, MIRROR, mirror. The word didn't make sense, but it felt wrong, like a name that shouldn't be spoken. Jake laughed, trying to break the tension. Mirror? What kind of dumbass ghost name is that? But before he could finish, the planchette shot across the board, knocking over a beer can. It landed on goodbye. We hadn't moved it. I know we hadn't. Sarah stood up, backing away from the table. That's it. I'm out. Mike was already grabbing his jacket, muttering about how he didn't sign up for this shit. Jake just sat there, staring at the board like he was waiting for it to do something else. I wanted to laugh it off, to tell them it was just a game, but my mouth was dry, and my hands wouldn't stop shaking. We left the board on the table and piled into Jake's car, none of us saying much. The drive home was quiet, the kind of quiet that feels like it's hiding something. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the planchette moving, spelling out mirror. I kept hearing my grandmother's voice, warning me about the attic, about things that shouldn't be touched. Around midnight, I got up to get a glass of water. The house was dark, the kind of dark that makes you feel like you're being watched. I avoided looking at the mirrors as I passed them, the one in the hallway, the one in the bathroom. I don't know why, but the word mirror kept echoing in my head, like a warning I didn't understand. When I got to the kitchen, I froze. The air felt wrong, too still, like the house was holding its breath again. I turned on the light, and for a split second, I saw something in the reflection of the window above the sink. Not my face. Something else. Something with too many eyes, crowded together like a cluster of spiders staring back at me. I spun around, but there was nothing there. Just the empty kitchen, the hum of the fridge, and my own heartbeat hammering in my ears. I told myself it was my imagination, that I was just freaked out from the Ouija board. But when I looked back at the window, the reflection was normal. Just me, pale and shaken. The next morning, I called Jake. He sounded off, his voice flat. "You okay?" I asked. He didn't answer right away. When he did, he said, "I saw something last night. In my mirror." My stomach dropped. He described it. Eyes, too many of them, pressed together in a face that wasn't a face. Exactly what I'd seen. I didn't tell him that. I couldn't. Instead, I told him to meet me at my house. I called Sarah and Mike, too. Sarah didn't pick up. Mike did, but he sounded hungover, said he didn't want to talk about that stupid board, and hung up. Jake showed up an hour later, looking like he hadn't slept. His eyes were bloodshot, his hands fidgeting. "We need to get rid of it," he said, before I could even say anything. We went to the living room, where the Ouija board still sat on the coffee table. It looked different. The wood was darker, the letters sharper, like they'd been carved deeper overnight. I didn't want to touch it, but Jake grabbed it and the planchette, shoving them into a trash bag. "We're burning this thing," he said. We drove to the edge of town, to an empty lot where kids sometimes lit bonfires. Jake doused the board in lighter fluid and tossed a match. The flames caught fast, too fast, licking up the wood like it was starving. But the fire wasn't normal. It burned green, then black, and the smoke smelled wrong. Not like wood, but like something rotting. Jake gagged, stepping back. I heard something in the crackle of the flames, a sound like whispering, too low to make out words but loud enough to make my skin crawl. The board didn't burn right either. The edges charred, but the letters stayed clear, untouched, like they were mocking us. When it was over, there was nothing left but ash and a few chunks of wood that wouldn't burn. Jake kicked dirt over it, muttering about how we were done with this shit. But I didn't feel done. I felt like we'd started something we couldn't stop. On the drive back, I kept glancing in the rearview mirror, half expecting to see those eyes again. I didn't. But the feeling of being watched didn't go away. That night, Sarah finally called me back. Her voice was a whisper, barely audible. "I saw it," she said. "In my mirror. It's watching me." Before I could ask what she meant, the line went dead. I tried calling back, but it went straight to voicemail. I texted Mike, told him we needed to check on her. He didn't respond. I sat in my room staring at the mirror on my dresser, the one I'd covered with a sheet after last night. I didn't want to look, didn't want to know what was waiting, but I could feel it. Something was there, just out of sight, waiting for me to slip, to look too long, to give it a way in. I don't know what we woke up with that board. I don't know what mirror is, but it's not gone. It's still here, watching, waiting, And I'm starting to think it's not just in the mirrors anymore. I didn't sleep after Sarah's call. Her voice kept looping in my head, that shaky whisper. It's watching me. I stared at the sheet covering my dresser mirror, the fabric sagging in the middle like it was being pulled inward. The house was too quiet, the kind of quiet that amplifies every creak, every rustle, until you're jumping at shadows. I wanted to call her again, but my phone sat dead on my nightstand, battery drained despite being fully charged an hour ago. I didn't plug it in. I was too afraid to get out of bed, to cross the room where the mirror waited. By morning, I was a wreck, eyes gritty, skin clammy. I called Jake from my mom's landline. He picked up on the first ring, his voice hoarse. "Sarah's gone," he said before I could speak. My stomach twisted. "Gone where?" I asked, but he didn't know. Her mom had called him, frantic, saying Sarah hadn't come home last night. Her car was still in the driveway, her phone on her bed, but no Sarah. I told him about her call, the way she'd sounded, the way the line cut out. Jake went quiet, then said, "We need to find Mike." We met at Mike's place, a rundown apartment he shared with his older brother. The door was ajar when we got there, which wasn't like Mike. He was paranoid about locking up. Inside, the air smelled sour, like spoiled milk mixed with something metallic. The living room was a mess. Overturned furniture, broken glass, a smear of something dark on the carpet. Jake called Mike's name, but the only answer was the hum of the fridge. We found him in the bathroom, slumped against the tub, his eyes wide open, staring at the mirror above the sink. The glass was cracked, spider webbing out from the center, and there were streaks of blood on the shards like he'd punched it. His hands were shredded, skin hanging in flaps, but that wasn't what killed him. His throat was torn open, not cut. Torn like something had clawed it apart. Blood soaked his shirt, pooled on the tile, still wet, glinting in the light. Jake gagged, stumbling back. I couldn't move, couldn't look away from Mike's eyes. They weren't right. They were too wide, too empty, like he'd seen something so awful it burned out everything else. I forced myself to look at the mirror, at the cracks radiating from a single point. In the fractured reflection, I thought I saw movement. Something dark, shifting just beyond the glass. I blinked and it was gone, but my skin prickled, like 1,000 needles pressing in. We didn't call the cops. We should have, but we were scared. Scared of what they'd find. Scared of what we'd have to explain. Instead, we ran. Back to my house, to the living room where it all started. The coffee table was empty, the Ouija board gone. I tore the place apart, checking under couches, behind curtains, even the attic again. Nothing. Jake just stood there, pale, muttering, "We burned it. We fucking burned it." But we both knew something wasn't right. The board was gone, but the air still felt heavy, like it was clinging to us, watching. I told Jake about the eyes I'd seen in the kitchen window, about Sarah's call, about the thing in Mike's mirror. He didn't want to hear it, kept saying we needed to forget it, move on. But then he stopped, his eyes fixed on the hallway mirror behind me. "Don't turn around," he whispered. I froze, my heart slamming against my ribs. "What do you see?" I asked, my voice barely audible. He didn't answer, just grabbed my arm and pulled me out of the house into his car. As we peeled out, I glanced back at the front window. For a second, I saw it again. Those eyes crowded together, staring from inside the glass, not reflecting but there, like they were pressed against it, watching us leave. We drove to the lot where we'd burned the board. The ashes were still there, scattered in the dirt, but the chunks of unburned wood were gone. Jake kicked at the ground, cursing, saying someone must have taken them. But I knew better. It wasn't someone. It was something. The air felt wrong here too, thick, like it was pressing down on us. I noticed scratches in the dirt, not random but deliberate, forming letters, M-I-R-R-O-R. I didn't point them out to Jake. He was already unraveling, his hands shaking as he lit a cigarette he didn't smoke. We went to Sarah's house next, hoping she'd turned up. Her mom let us in, her face red from crying. Sarah's room was untouched, bed unmade, clothes on the floor, her phone still on the nightstand. I checked it, but it was dead, just like mine had been. Jake paced, muttering about how we needed to figure this out, how we couldn't just wait for it to come for us. I didn't know what it was, but I felt it too, that sense of something closing in, tightening around us like a noose. In Sarah's room, I avoided the mirror on her vanity. It was small, framed in cheap plastic, but it felt alive, like it was waiting for me to look. Jake wasn't so careful. He stopped in front of it staring, his reflection pale and distorted. "Jake, don't," I said, but he didn't listen. He leaned closer, his breath fogging the glass. Then he screamed, a sound I'd never heard from him, raw and terrified. He stumbled back, clutching his face, blood seeping between his fingers. I grabbed him, pulling him away, and saw the mirror. It wasn't cracked, but there was something wrong with it, a ripple in the glass, like it was liquid, shifting. Jake's face was clawed, 3 deep gashes across his cheek, the skin flapping open, exposing muscle and bone. He was sobbing, saying over and over, "It reached out. It fucking reached out." I dragged him outside, his blood soaking my shirt. We sat on the curb, him shaking, me trying to keep it together. I didn't know what to do. Hospitals wouldn't help, not with this. Whatever we'd let out with that board wasn't something you could stitch up or medicate. I thought about Mike, about his throat, about Sarah's empty room. I thought about the word mirror, carved into the board, scratched into the dirt. It wasn't a name, I realized. It was a command, a way in. We went back to my house because we didn't know where else to go. I covered every mirror I could find. Sheets, towels, duct tape over the bathroom one. Jake sat on the couch, holding a rag to his face, the blood soaking through. He wasn't talking anymore, just staring at the floor, his eyes glassy. I tried to think, to figure out what we'd done, what we'd called. The Ouija board was gone, but it didn't matter. It wasn't the board. It was us. We'd opened something, invited it in, and now it was here, slipping through every reflection, every surface that could hold it. That night I heard it. Not a sound exactly, but a presence, a shift in the air. I was in my room, the sheets still over the mirror, but I could feel it pulling, like a vacuum trying to suck me in. I kept my eyes on the floor, counting the cracks in the wood, anything to avoid looking up. But then I heard Jake scream from the living room, a sound that cut through the house like a blade. I ran to him, my feet slipping on the hardwood. He was on the floor, thrashing, his hands clawing at his eyes. Blood streamed down his face, pooling in his mouth, choking him. He'd torn his own eyes out, the sockets raw and empty, strings of tissue hanging like wet thread. I vomited, the acid burning my throat, and tried to hold him down, but he was too strong, flailing like something else was moving him. "It's in me," he gasped, his voice wet with blood. "It's in the mirrors. It sees everything." Then he went still, his body slumping, lifeless. I backed away, my hands slick with his blood, my mind screaming. The TV was on in the corner, muted like before, but the screen wasn't showing a movie anymore. It was showing me, my reflection, but wrong. My face was there, but my eyes were gone, replaced by clusters of writhing, glistening eyes, packed together, blinking out of sync. I screamed, throwing a lamp at the screen. It shattered, sparks flying, but the image didn't stop. It was in every piece of glass, every shard watching me. I ran outside, barefoot, the pavement cold against my feet. I didn't know where I was going, just that I had to get away. But the streetlights reflected in puddles, in car windows, in the glass of storefronts. Everywhere I looked, I saw it. Those eyes, not mine, staring back. I collapsed in an alley, curling up against a brick wall, covering my face with my hands. I could still feel it, watching, waiting. I knew then that it wasn't just in the mirrors. It was in me, in Jake, in Mike, in Sarah. We'd let it in, and now it was everywhere, slipping through every reflection, every shadow, every piece of us. I don't know how long I stayed there, shivering in the dark, but I knew I couldn't run forever. It was still out there, still watching, and I was the only one left. I didn't go back home after the alley. I couldn't. The thought of walking through that house, past the covered mirrors, the blood-soaked couch where Jake died, made my stomach churn. I wandered instead, sticking to back streets and shadows, avoiding anything that could reflect. Windows, puddles, even the polished chrome of parked cars. My reflection wasn't mine anymore. It belonged to it, to whatever we'd let in with that cursed Ouija board. Every time I caught a glimpse of glass, I felt those eyes. Dozens of them, wet and blinking, crowded into a face that should have been mine but wasn't. They were waiting, always waiting for me to look too long to let them in deeper. I ended up at the edge of town, near the old quarry where kids used to dare each other to jump into the water below. It was abandoned now, the water stagnant, the air heavy with the smell of damp stone and decay. I don't know why I went there. Maybe because it was open, empty, no surfaces to catch a reflection. The moon was high, casting a sickly light over the jagged rocks, and I sat on the cliff's edge, my legs dangling, trying to think. Sarah was gone. Mike was dead. Jake was dead. And I was alone, running from something I couldn't outrun. My hands were still crusted with Jake's blood, flaking off in dark patches. I didn't try to wipe them clean. What was the point? I kept replaying that night with the Ouija board, the way the planchette moved, spelling mirror, the way the air thickened, like the room itself was alive. I should have listened to my grandmother's warnings about the attic, about things that shouldn't be touched. But I hadn't. And now it was loose, slipping through every reflective surface, every shadow. I wondered if Sarah was still alive, if she'd seen it too, if it had taken her the way it took Mike and Jake. I didn't want to think about what it did to them. Mike's throat torn open, Jake's empty sockets. But the images wouldn't leave me. They were burned into my mind, as vivid as the eyes in the glass. The quarry was quiet, but not the good kind. It was the kind of quiet that feels like it's hiding something, like the world is holding its breath. I heard it before I saw it. A low, wet sound, like something dragging itself across the ground. I froze, my heart pounding so hard it hurt. The sound came from behind me, from the direction of the water. I didn't want to look, but I had to. Slowly, I turned my head, keeping my eyes low, avoiding the still surface of the quarry pool. Something moved in the shadows, a shape that wasn't right. Too long, too thin, its limbs bending in ways they shouldn't. It wasn't human, but it wasn't anything else I could name either. It was just wrong, like a piece of the world had been torn open and something else had crawled through. It didn't approach, just lingered at the edge of the light, its form shifting like it couldn't decide what it wanted to be. I could feel it watching, not with eyes, but with something deeper, something that saw inside me. My skin crawled, and I tasted bile, sharp and sour. I wanted to run, but my legs felt heavy, like they were sinking into the ground. The thing made that sound again, wet and guttural, and I realized it wasn't just dragging itself. It was laughing, a sound that scraped against my bones. I don't know how I found the strength, but I stood, backing away from the cliff, keeping my eyes on the dirt. The thing didn't follow, but I felt it there, waiting, patient. It didn't need to chase me. It knew I couldn't escape. I stumbled through the woods, branches clawing at my face, until I reached the highway. A trucker stopped for me. His face creased with worry when he saw my blood-streaked clothes, my wild eyes. "You okay, kid?" he asked. I nodded, lying, and climbed into the cab. I kept my head down, avoiding the side mirrors, the windshield, anything that could show me those eyes. He dropped me at a gas station a few towns over. It was dawn, the sky bruising purple, and I sat on a bench outside trying to figure out what to do. I couldn't go home. I couldn't go to the police. They'd never believe me. And what could they do against something that lived in reflections? I thought about finding a priest, someone who might know how to banish whatever this was, but I didn't know where to start. And deep down, I knew it wouldn't matter. This thing wasn't a ghost, wasn't a demon. It was something older, hungrier, something that had been waiting in that board in my grandmother's attic for longer than I could imagine. I bought a coffee from the gas station, my hands shaking as I handed over the crumpled bills I'd found in my pocket. The clerk barely looked at me, but I felt exposed, like the thing could see me through his eyes, through the security camera above the counter. I took the coffee outside and sat in the shade, away from the glass doors. That's when I noticed the pain in my hand, sharp and sudden. I looked down and saw a cut across my palm, deep, the edges ragged. I hadn't felt it before, hadn't noticed it happen. Blood welled up, dripping onto the pavement, and I stared at it, mesmerized. It wasn't just blood. It moved, pooling in shapes that weren't random. Letters, faint but clear, M-I-R-R-O-R. I dropped the coffee, the cup splitting open, brown liquid mixing with the blood. My chest tightened, and I ran, not caring where, just away from that word, that name, that thing. I ended up in a park, hiding in a public restroom, the kind with no mirrors, just chipped tiles and a flickering fluorescent light. I sat in a stall, door locked, trying to breathe, trying to think. My hand throbbed, the cut still bleeding, and I wrapped it in toilet paper, watching it soak through. I kept hearing Jake's voice choking on his own blood. It's in the mirrors. It sees everything. I don't know how long I stayed there. Hours, maybe, until the light above me flickered and died. The darkness was sudden, suffocating, and I felt it again. That presence, closer now, pressing against me. The air smelled wrong, like rotten metal, and I heard that wet, dragging sound, louder this time, coming from outside the stall. I held my breath, my body shaking, and then I saw it, not with my eyes, but in my mind, clear as a photograph, the thing from the quarry, its body twisting, its face a mass of eyes, all staring, all knowing. It wasn't just watching me. It was inside me, in my blood, in my thoughts, in every reflection I'd ever seen. I don't remember leaving the restroom, but I was outside again, running, the sky dark now, stars hidden by clouds. I found a payphone, one of the last ones left, and called Sarah's number, praying she'd pick up. It rang and rang, then went to voicemail, her voice bright and alive, a sound that broke something in me. I hung up and dialed my mom, but the line crackled, and I heard that laugh again, low and wet, coming through the receiver. I dropped it, the phone dangling by its cord, and ran again, my lungs burning, my hand dripping blood. I ended up at a church, the doors unlocked, the pews empty. The stained glass windows glowed faintly, casting colored shadows across the floor. I knelt at the altar, not praying, not believing, just desperate for something to stop this. The air grew heavy, the same way it had that night with the Ouija board, and I knew it was here. I didn't need to see it. I felt it in the way the shadows moved, in the way the silence screamed. I looked up, and there it was. Not in a mirror, not in glass, but in the polished wood of the altar. My reflection warped, my face dissolving into a writhing mass of eyes, blinking, staring, endless. I screamed, and the sound echoed, but it wasn't mine. It was theirs, a chorus of voices that weren't voices, tearing through me. My hand burned, the cut splitting wider, blood pooling on the floor, forming that word again, mirror. I clawed at it, smearing it, but it kept forming, over and over, until my hands were raw, my nails broken. I don't know when I stopped, when I fell, when the darkness took me. But I woke up here, in this place, where there are no mirrors, no reflections, just walls of stone and a light that never goes out. I don't know where I am. I don't know if I'm alive, but I know it's still with me. I can feel it, in my blood, in my bones, in the spaces between my thoughts. It's not done. It never will be. And every time I close my eyes, I see them, those eyes watching, waiting forever. Thank you for listening. Hope I didn't scare you too much. If you like my stories, please consider giving me a like and subscribe. See you next time.